This tutorial, intended primarily for beginners to Filmora, will teach you how to make a video of yourself and your reflection in a mirror, with your reflection breaking away from you and taking on a life of its own as you react. Because this tutorial is intended mainly for beginners, it's going to be rather slow and detailed, covering every move that you have to make, explaining what you do and why you do it. People who are experienced with Filmora might do better to find one of the excellent pro-level tutorials on YouTube, which race through things much faster than I do. The video that you produce will have 3 parts. The first part will be with you in the mirror in sync with each other and you controlling it, your moves, your dialogue. So we're going to start out with the video, the first part. And you'll see me just making faces at the mirror and waving at the mirror. The second part of the video will have the mirror breaking away from you, in which the mirror image and you will be doing different things. For me, when I look in the mirror and my mirror image is doing something different, I get itchy all over and I just have to scratch. And then the third part will be back in sync again with the mirror following you. You will film it actually in 4 parts rather than 3. The first part will be the first part of the final with you in the mirror in sync. The second part, which you should go on just seamlessly, don't even bother stopping the camera. The second part will be the mirror's actions. So you will be performing the things that you want to show up in the mirror. The third part will be your reaction to what the mirror is doing. So the second and third parts in the final video will be overlaid with each other, and I'll show you how to do that. And then the last part will have you and the mirror in sync again. The first thing that we're going to do, as nearly always, is import the raw video. I made this video with no sound in it deliberately so that I'll be able to do a voiceover later to explain things as they happen. You normally would be speaking or having other sound effects going during your filming, but this one will be silent, so don't be surprised about that. So I'm going to click that import button there, and I'm going to find my Talking Mirror video and double click it, and it just appeared here. Now, very often when you do this, a box will appear right around here somewhere saying that the video that you're importing does not match your project settings and asking you to update it, and you will almost always let it do that. So we're going to drag this video, hold down the left mouse button, drag it down to track 1, and sure enough, there's that warning. It says that it doesn't match your project default settings. That's no big deal. Just go ahead and say match to media. You want to select match to media because that's what your media is. So I'm going to click that, and there it comes. Now, we're going to click on the timeline just to make sure it's selected. And this brings us to what is possibly the hardest and most critical part of the whole project. When I recorded this video, as I explained earlier, it was actually recorded in 4 parts. The first part has me and the mirror in sync, and I'm in control. The second part is the mirror's part. The third part is my part that overlaps with the mirror. And the fourth part is back in sync again with me in control once more. And what we need to do is mark out the boundaries between those 4 segments. What makes this particularly difficult is that because my part when we're out of sync and the mirror's part when we're out of sync, have to be pretty much the same size, ideally exactly the same length, and if not, pretty close. And so you have to be fairly exact when you do that. So I'm going to put the mouse cursor on the playhead here, and I'm going to drag it over, and I'm going to be watching the preview video. And what I do to mark the segments when I recorded this is I clasped my hands at my chest, both so I would have a smooth transition from one segment to the other, and also to make finding these spots easy. You don't necessarily have to do it that way, but you should really have some universal pose. So right there, I am clasped at my chest, and that's the transition between the first and the second segments. So I'm going to go over here, this little marker icon. I'm going to click that, and that's going to drop a marker on the timeline. You can see the marker right there where the mouse is. So that's marking one boundary. Now I'm going to drag it to the right. Again, I'm going to find the next boundary. And I'm looking for my hands clasped, and it's right about there. Okay, and so I'm going to drop a marker on that. That's the boundary between the second and the third parts. And I have one more boundary to find. And there is my hands clasped right there. And I'm going to mark that spot. Now, if you want to be really thorough about this, you should check the timing here. And a good way to check it is right up here. You see where the mouse is circling? That shows the seconds and fractions of a second that the playhead is from the beginning. So you could actually go back to this first marker, write down that time, go to the second marker, write down that time, and go to the third marker, write down that time, subtract the second and the first, subtract the third and the second, and make sure they are either the same or pretty darn close. They're close enough for this project right now, so I'm going to leave them right where they are. Now that you have got those marked, by the way, the reason I marked them rather than cutting them is that you can always move markers a little bit, whereas once you put in a cut, you can't uncut it easily, especially if you've done other things. So I'm going to go back to this first marker right there. And now I'm going to go over to the little scissors icon. See this scissors icon here? And click that. That's going to split the track at that place. And now I'm going to go over to the next marker, and I'm going to position the playhead directly on that marker. I'm going to go back to the scissors icon, click that, it's cut it again. So now the track is split into three parts, the first, the second, and this last part combines both the third and the fourth parts, but we don't have to cut that one. So just to review, right here in the first section, we've got me and the mirror in sync with me in control. In the second section, we've got us out of sync with the mirror in control. In this section, the third section, we're still out of sync, but this is my part while the mirror is on its own. This is what I'm doing. And then the fourth section is we're back in sync again and I'm in control. So we're going to come over to this second section, which is the mirror. I click on it. Notice how it's outlined in blue. This section has been selected. I'm going to hold down the left mouse button and drag it straight up. So it has now moved up. This is the mirror section here. Now we come over here, put the cursor down in the third and fourth, which are still joined together. Click it, hold down the left mouse button, and drag it to the left until it snaps in place. Now notice what has happened here. The mirrors part and my part, where we're out of sync, are now overlapped. You will also notice that I was just a little bit off. I didn't check those seconds and make sure they were identical. Look at where the playhead is here at the end of the mirror section, but look at where the marker is in here. So the playhead is just a second or two past the marker. If I were being fanatic about this and wanted to make it perfect, I would undo everything that I just did. Or if I had been even more fanatic, I would have prevented that from happening in the first place by checking the timing, by subtracting and making sure they were absolutely identical. So this is what you would need to do if you want utter perfection. I'm not terribly concerned about perfection in this. This is just a tutorial. Okay, now, if we were to play this, I'm just going to drag the playhead through this to review what's happening here. Here's the first section. Notice how we're perfectly in sync. Everything that I'm doing is reflected in the mirror perfectly. That's all just fine. And now we come to the mirrors part where we go out of sync. Notice here, we're still in sync. What you're seeing on the left is me doing what I want the mirror to do. That's because the top track, the topmost track, is always what's displayed. This bottom track, which is my reaction to the mirror, is getting overwritten by this top track. So really what you're seeing here is us in sync with me doing what I want the mirror to do. That, of course, will be a problem, which we're going to fix in just a minute. And then at the end here, this is where we're back in sync and I'm in control again. So let's go back up here to the mirror section. I'm going to click that so it's selected. Notice that there's now a blue line around it. It's highlighted. I'm going to go up here to the Effects button. And if we go down to Utility, notice there are 9 different utility effects. Go over here to Image Mask. This is what we want. We want the image mask. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to drag it down onto the mirrors track. Now, notice that the one that defaulted is this oblong kind of thing. Here's where we have to mess around with some separate elevators to get exactly what we want. I'm going to double click in the mirror section, and that's going to bring up all the things that we can do to this track. And at the very bottom, you notice video effects. So I'm going to expand video effects. And now, in order to see what just got expanded, I have to go over here to this elevator, which is unfortunately quite difficult to find. But once you find it, you just drag it down. And so here we see the image mask. And now here's yet another elevator, this little thing right here, difficult to find again. Drag it down, and you will notice that this circular one is what's highlighted. That's the default that always comes up. But we don't want that one. We want to go down a little more. And in fact, this is the one that we're going to want. In all of these masks, notice part of it is black and part of it is checkerboard. The part that's checkerboard is the part of this track that's going to show. The part that's black will be transparent on this track and let the track below it show through. I want the mirror on the right because that's how it is in the video, and me on the left, so I'm going to double click this one. And so that's going to give us this straight division. And now I'm going to find this elevator here again. I do wish Filmora had made these elevators a little bit wider. And notice we have all these options. The option we're going to be using is X, which controls the X position of the dividing line. You see how that dividing line moves back and forth. We can control, if it's all the way to the left here, we're seeing the bottom track. If it's all the way to the right, we're seeing the top track. We want to get this dividing line right in the middle. So what this is doing now is on the right side, we're seeing the mirror, which is this top track. And on the left side, this mask is transparent on the left side, so we're seeing the bottom track come through. And when we're happy with the location of that, by the way, we should make sure we're happy with the location. I'm just going to drag this playhead across here and make sure everything is just fine. It is. Let me show you what happens if you're a little bit off on that location. I'm going to move that dividing line a little bit too far to the left, and oops, look what happens there. We get some leakage of my hand in the real side over into the mirror side. We do not want that, obviously. So we drag that X back to the right and make sure it's good enough. And I'm going to do one more quick sweep through to make sure everything is fine. Oh, look at that. My fingers showed through a little bit there. So we've got to drag it just a little bit more to the right, and that should be just fine. And so we can click OK. And now we're pretty much done. Let's just scan through once really quickly to see if everything is fine. Here's the beginning where we're in sync with me in control. And then we get to the out of sync part, and the mirror breaks free, and I'm scratching my head in consternation, wondering what's going on as I watch my mirror image not do what I'm doing. And we keep going through, and then all of a sudden we're back in sync. And that's the end. And so that's complete at this point. We're ready to export the video. You also, of course, in a real project would probably want to import some other effects, add some elements to it, make it a little bit fancier. But this is the essence of the project, and we're ready to export the file. Thank you very much.